A stranger wrote 7 words on my coffee cup that morning, and those 7 words are the only reason I'm still alive. I was standing in a hospital waiting room, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the small paper cup of water a nurse had given me. 2 police officers were across the room interviewing the barista who had saved my life, a 19-year-old girl with purple hair who kept wiping tears from her cheeks as she spoke. Through the window behind them, I could see paramedics wheeling a man out on a stretcher, his wrists handcuffed to the rails even though he was barely conscious. I watched them load him into an ambulance, and I felt nothing. No relief, no anger, just a cold, hollow emptiness that I didn't know how to fill. That was the day I walked into my regular coffee shop on a normal Tuesday morning and walked out running for my life. A man had followed me inside, a man I had never spoken to, but who had been watching me for weeks. He had a plan for me that day. He had tools in his pocket and photographs of me in his car, and the only thing that stopped him was a teenage barista who noticed something I completely missed and decided to risk everything to warn a stranger. I need to take you back to before that morning so you can understand how invisible the danger really was. My name is Tessa, and at 27 years old, I was living the kind of quiet, predictable life that made me feel safe. I worked as an elementary school art teacher in Portland, Oregon, spending my days helping second graders learn how to mix paint colors and express themselves through drawings and collages. I loved my job more than I ever expected to. There's something pure about watching a 7-year-old discover that blue and yellow make green, something that reminded me why I chose this career in the first place. I lived alone in a small rental house in a quiet neighborhood about 10 minutes from the school. The house was old but charming, with hardwood floors that creaked and a backyard just big enough for the small vegetable garden I never quite managed to keep alive. My neighbors were mostly young families and retired couples, the kind of people who waved when you walked by and kept an eye on each other's packages. It felt safe. It felt like the kind of place where nothing bad could happen. My younger brother Gavin lived across town. He was 24 and worked as a physical therapist at a sports medicine clinic. We weren't the type of siblings who talked every day, but we were close in the way that mattered. Every Wednesday night, we had dinner together at our parents' house, a tradition that had started when I moved back to Portland 3 years ago and never stopped. Our mother Lorraine was a retired nurse who spent her days gardening and worrying about both of us living in the city. She called me at least twice a week to remind me to lock my doors and check my smoke detectors. Our father Dean was quieter, the kind of man who showed love through action rather than words. He was always showing up at my house unannounced to fix a leaky faucet or replace a light bulb I hadn't even noticed was out. My mornings always started the same way. I woke up at 6, showered, got dressed, and walked 3 blocks to a coffee shop called Mosaic Brew. It was a small place with exposed brick walls and local artwork hanging for sale. The tables were mismatched, the chairs were old, and the whole place smelled like fresh espresso and baked goods. I had been going there every weekday morning for almost 2 years, always arriving at 6:45, always ordering the same thing, a medium vanilla latte with oat milk. The staff knew me by name. The owner, a woman in her 50s named Paulette, would wave at me from the back when she saw me come in. The morning barista was a college student named Sierra, a girl with short purple hair and a small nose ring who always drew little smiley faces or hearts on my cup. She was studying psychology at Portland State and worked the early shift to pay for her textbooks. We weren't friends exactly, but we had the kind of easy familiarity that comes from seeing someone at the same time every single day. She knew my order before I said it. I knew she had a cat named Mochi and a boyfriend who played in a band. My life felt ordinary in the best possible way. I had a job that fulfilled me, a family I was close to, and a routine that brought me comfort. I never walked through the world feeling afraid. I never looked over my shoulder or wondered if someone was watching me. I thought I was aware of my surroundings. I thought I was careful. Looking back now, I realized there were signs I should have noticed. A dark blue sedan that seemed to be parked on my street more often than made sense, sometimes in front of my house and sometimes a few doors down. A prickling feeling on the back of my neck when I walked to my mailbox in the evenings. A man I vaguely remembered seeing at the grocery store one week, then at the gas station the next, then at the park where I sometimes walked on Saturday mornings. He never spoke to me. He never came close enough to seem threatening. He was just there, existing in the background of my life in a way that felt like coincidence. I told myself it was nothing. Portland isn't that big of a city. You run into the same people sometimes. It doesn't mean anything. I pushed away that uncomfortable feeling and went on with my safe, predictable life, never knowing that someone was studying me the way I studied a painting, learning my patterns, memorizing my schedule, waiting for the perfect moment. And that moment was about to arrive. Subscribe for more stories and tell me where you're watching from. The Tuesday morning that changed everything started exactly like every other morning. I woke up at 6, took a shower, and put on my usual work outfit, a soft green cardigan over a white blouse and dark jeans. I grabbed my bag, locked my front door, and started the 3-block walk to Mosaic Brew. The air was cool and damp the way Portland mornings always are in early spring. A light fog hung over the neighborhood, softening the edges of everything. I remember thinking it was peaceful. I remember feeling content. I pushed through the door of the coffee shop at exactly 6:45, the same time I arrived every single day. The familiar smell of espresso and fresh pastries wrapped around me like a warm blanket. I loved that smell. It meant routine. It meant safety. It meant the start of another ordinary day. The shop was quiet that morning. An older woman sat near the window reading a thick paperback novel, a half-eaten muffin on a plate beside her. A young man with noise-canceling headphones was hunched over a laptop at one of the corner tables, his fingers moving rapidly across the keyboard. And near the door, at a small table I usually walked right past, sat a man I didn't recognize. I didn't pay much attention to him at first. He was looking at his phone, scrolling through something with one hand while his other hand rested on the table. White, maybe mid-30s, medium build, wearing a dark green jacket. He looked completely ordinary, the kind of person you wouldn't remember 5 minutes after seeing them. I got in line behind a woman ordering a complicated drink with extra foam and no sugar. While I waited, I glanced toward the counter and smiled at Sierra. She was already looking at me, and she smiled back, but something about it felt off. The smile was there on her lips, but it didn't reach her eyes. Her face looked tight, almost strained, and her gaze kept flickering toward the man near the door. I assumed she was just tired. Opening shifts start at 5 in the morning. Anyone would be exhausted. The woman in front of me finally finished ordering and stepped aside. I moved up to the counter. "Hey, Tessa." "The usual?" Sierra's voice was bright, but there was something underneath it. A slight tremor I had never heard before. Her hands were busy preparing to make my drink, but they seemed to be moving faster than normal, almost rushed. "Yes, please. Medium vanilla latte. Oat milk. Coming right up." She turned away to the espresso machine, and I stepped to the side to wait. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my email, deleting a few spam messages and scanning a newsletter from the school district. Normal things. Mindless things. I wasn't paying attention to anything around me. Sierra finished my drink in record time. Usually she took her time, making small talk while the espresso pulled and the milk steamed. Today she worked in silence, her back to me, her shoulders tense. When she turned around and handed me the cup, she held my gaze for a moment longer than usual. Her eyes were wide, and I could see something in them that I couldn't name. Fear, urgency, a desperate plea. Her hand was trembling slightly when she released the cup into my grip. I looked down automatically, expecting to see her usual smiley face or a little heart drawn in black marker. Instead, there were words. 7 words written in small, hurried letters along the side of the cup. "Don't drink this. Act normal and leave." My brain couldn't process what I was reading. For a moment, I thought it was a joke, some kind of prank Sierra was playing that I didn't understand. I almost laughed. I almost asked her what she meant. Then I looked up and saw her face. She wasn't laughing. Her jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscles in her neck straining. She gave me the tiniest shake of her head, so small that anyone else would have missed it. Then she mouthed a single word, her lips barely moving. "Now." Something cold spread through my chest. I didn't understand what was happening, but every instinct in my body suddenly screamed that I needed to listen. I needed to move. I needed to get out of this coffee shop right now. I turned toward the door, forcing my legs to move at a normal pace. Casual, relaxed, like nothing was wrong. The man near the entrance was still looking at his phone, but as I started walking, his eyes flicked up toward me, just for a second, just long enough for me to see that he wasn't really looking at his phone at all. He was watching me. He had been watching me the entire time. I pushed through the door and stepped onto the sidewalk. The cool morning air hit my face. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Every part of me wanted to run, but I forced myself to take a few normal steps first, just in case, just to be safe. Then I heard the door open behind me, heavy footsteps on the concrete, moving fast. I dropped my coffee and ran. I ran faster than I knew I was capable of running. My bag slammed against my hip with every step. My shoes weren't made for sprinting, and I could feel them slipping on the damp sidewalk. The coffee cup I dropped had splattered across the concrete behind me, but I didn't care. I didn't look back. I just ran. The footsteps behind me were heavy and fast. I could hear them gaining ground, getting closer with every second. My house was 3 blocks away, but it might as well have been 3 miles. I would never make it. Even if I did, my keys were buried somewhere in my bag. By the time I found them and unlocked the door, he would be on me. I needed help. I needed people. I needed somewhere safe right now. My brain raced through options as my legs pumped beneath me. The grocery store was 4 blocks in the wrong direction. The school was too far. Most of the houses around me were dark, their owners still asleep or already gone to work. I couldn't just start banging on random doors and hope someone answered in time. Then I remembered the fire station. It was 1 block to my left, on the corner of Maple and 3rd. I had driven past it 1,000 times without really seeing it. A squat brick building with big red garage doors and an American flag hanging out front. I had never been inside. I had never had a reason to notice it. But right now, it was the only thing that mattered. I cut hard to the left, nearly losing my footing as I changed direction. A car horn blared somewhere close, and I realized I had run into the street without looking. I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. The footsteps behind me faltered for just a moment, thrown off by my sudden turn, and I used that moment to push harder. The fire station was right there, 50 feet, 30 feet, 20. I slammed into the side door with my full weight, and it flew open. I stumbled into a garage bay where 2 firefighters were standing near a big red truck, checking equipment and talking quietly. They looked up in shock as I burst through the door, gasping for air, tears already streaming down my face. "Someone's chasing me." The words came out broken, barely louder than a whisper. "Please help me, please." One of them moved immediately. She was tall, with short gray hair and a calm, commanding presence. Without a word, she strode toward the door I had just come through and stepped outside. The other firefighter, a younger man with a shaved head, guided me behind the fire truck and told me to stay low. "You're safe now. Just stay right here. We've got you." I crouched behind the massive wheel of the truck, my back pressed against the cold metal, my whole body trembling so violently I could barely breathe. I pressed my hands over my mouth to keep from sobbing out loud. Every sound felt amplified. The hum of the fluorescent lights overhead, the distant rumble of traffic, my own heartbeat crashing in my ears. Then I heard voices outside. The female firefighter, her tone polite but firm. "Can I help you with something?" A man's voice answered. Calm, friendly, completely normal. "Yeah, sorry to bother you. I'm looking for my girlfriend. We had a fight this morning and she ran off. I just want to make sure she's okay. Have you seen a woman come through here? Green sweater, blonde hair?" My stomach turned to ice. He was describing me. He was standing right outside, describing exactly what I was wearing, pretending to be my boyfriend, pretending this was all some misunderstanding. The firefighter's voice didn't waver. "There's no one here matching that description. You should move along." A pause, longer than it should have been. I could picture him standing there, deciding what to do, weighing his options. The silence stretched until I thought I might scream. Then footsteps, walking away. Slow at first, then fading into the distance. The younger firefighter looked down at me with kind eyes. "Stay here. We're calling the police right now." I nodded, but I couldn't speak. I couldn't do anything except stay crouched behind that fire truck, shaking and crying, waiting for someone to tell me it was finally over. 2 patrol cars pulled into the fire station lot, their lights flashing, but sirens off. Officers climbed out and spoke briefly with the firefighters before one of them, a woman with her dark hair pulled back, in a tight bun, approached me. She introduced herself as Officer Ruiz and asked if I could describe the man who had followed me. I did my best, but my voice kept breaking and my memories felt scattered. White male, mid-30s, medium build, brown hair, dark green jacket. It wasn't much. It could have described 100 different men in Portland. Officer Ruiz wrote everything down and told me I was doing great. She asked if there was anywhere the man might have gone, anyone he might have contacted, any reason I could think of why someone would follow me. I shook my head to every question. I had no idea who he was. I had never seen him before that morning. At least that's what I thought at the time. Another officer offered to drive me back to Mosaic Brew to speak with the barista who had warned me. I agreed, even though part of me never wanted to see that coffee shop again. I needed to understand what had happened. I needed to know what Sierra had seen that made her write those words on my cup. When we pulled up outside the shop, there were already 2 more police cars parked at the curb. The morning rush had been cleared out, and a closed sign hung in the window. Inside, Sierra was sitting in a chair behind the counter, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea, her face pale and streaked with tears. When she saw me walk through the door, she stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. "Oh my God, are you okay? Did he hurt you?" I shook my head, and before I could say anything else, she crossed the space between us and threw her arms around me. She was shaking almost as badly as I was. "I didn't know what to do," she whispered against my shoulder. I was so scared. I thought if I said something out loud, he would hear me. I thought he might hurt both of us. I held onto her and let her cry, even though I barely knew her. In that moment, she felt like the only person in the world who understood what I had just been through. The police separated us to take our statements. Sierra sat with Officer Ruiz while I waited nearby, close enough to hear fragments of what she was saying. She told them the man had come into the shop right after me. He ordered a black coffee, paid in cash, and sat down at the table nearest the door. But he never touched his drink. He just sat there, staring at me the entire time I was in line. Sierra said something about him felt wrong from the moment he walked in. The way his eyes tracked my every movement. The way his leg bounced nervously under the table. The way he positioned himself between me and the only exit. Then she noticed something that made her blood run cold. While I was looking at my phone, the man reached into his jacket pocket and pulled something out. He held it low, in his lap, where he probably thought no one could see. But Sierra was watching him. She saw exactly what he was holding. A syringe, small, filled with clear liquid, the needle already uncapped. She didn't know what was in it. She didn't know what he was planning to do. But she knew it wasn't anything good. Her first instinct was to call out, to warn me directly, but she was terrified that if she did, he might panic and attack. She thought about calling 911, but she was afraid he would see her on the phone and act before help could arrive. So she did the only thing she could think of in that moment. She grabbed a marker and wrote on my cup, praying that I would read it, praying that I would understand. The police found him 2 hours later. He was sitting in his car, a dark blue sedan, parked on a side street 3 blocks from my house. The same car I had seen on my street so many times, and dismissed as nothing. When they searched the vehicle, they found the syringe Sierra had seen, filled with a powerful sedative. They found zip ties and duct tape in the glove compartment. They found a hunting knife under the passenger seat. And in the back seat, they found a folder. Inside were photographs of me, dozens of them. Me walking to my car in the school parking lot. Me pushing a cart through the grocery store. Me standing at my classroom window, visible through the glass. Me watering the plants on my front porch in the evening light. He had been watching me for 6 weeks. He knew my schedule better than I did. He knew where I lived, where I worked, where I bought my coffee every morning. That Tuesday, he had finally decided it was time. His name was Gregory Linden. He was 34 years old, worked as an IT technician at a company downtown, and had no prior criminal record. There was no connection between us. We had never met, never spoken, never crossed paths in any way that I could remember. He told police he first noticed me at a coffee shop 2 months earlier, not Mosaic Brew, but another place across town I had stopped at randomly one Saturday afternoon. Something about me caught his attention, and from that moment on, he couldn't let go. He found out where I lived by following me home that same day. He learned my schedule by watching me for weeks, noting the times I left for work, the routes I took, the places I visited. He knew I went to Mosaic Brew every weekday at 6:45. He knew I walked the 3 blocks alone. He knew my classroom was on the east side of the school building, and that I sometimes stayed late to clean up after my students. He had been planning what he called his introduction for over a month. The syringe contained a sedative strong enough to knock me unconscious within seconds. His plan was to approach me outside the coffee shop, inject me before I could react, and carry me to his car like a boyfriend helping his tired girlfriend. From there, the police said they didn't know exactly what he intended. He wasn't talking, and honestly, I didn't want to know. Gregory Linden was charged with stalking, attempted kidnapping, and possession of a controlled substance with intent to cause harm. His trial lasted 3 days. I testified on the second day, sitting in a witness box 15 feet away from the man who had hunted me for 6 weeks. My voice was steady, but under the table my hands shook the entire time. I didn't look at him. I couldn't. I just stared at the prosecutor and answered every question as clearly as I could. He was convicted on all charges and sentenced to 15 years in prison. The judge called his behavior calculated and predatory. She said it was only through the quick thinking of a brave young woman that a tragedy had been prevented. I cried when she said that. Not for myself, but for Sierra, who was sitting in the gallery behind me. I couldn't go back to my rental house after that. The first night I tried to sleep there, I lay awake until dawn, listening to every creak and rustle, convinced I heard footsteps outside my window. I moved out 2 weeks later. My parents wanted me to come home, but I wasn't ready to give up my life in Portland. Instead, I found an apartment in a secure building downtown, with a doorman and cameras in every hallway. Gavin helped me move. He didn't say much, but he stayed with me the first 3 nights, sleeping on my couch so I wouldn't be alone. I still teach art to second graders. I still love watching their faces light up when they discover something new, but I drive to work now instead of walking. I vary my schedule so I'm never too predictable. I pay attention to the cars on my street and the people in my periphery. I trust my instincts when something feels wrong. Sierra and I became real friends after everything happened. She transferred to a different coffee shop closer to her campus, and I visit her there every few weeks. She always makes my vanilla latte with oat milk and draws a little heart on the cup. Every time I see it, I think about how different my life could have been, how close I came to disappearing. I asked her once why she did it, why she risked herself for a customer she barely knew. She thought about it for a moment, then shrugged. Something felt wrong. I couldn't just stand there and do nothing. What if everyone always looked away? What if nobody ever helped? That question changed something in me. I think about it every single day now. I notice things I never noticed before. The woman on the bus who looks uncomfortable when a stranger sits too close. The girl at the grocery store who keeps glancing nervously at a man following her through the aisles. The teenager at the park who seems afraid of the person walking behind her. I don't look away anymore. I can't. Because I know what it feels like to be watched by someone who means you harm. And I know what it feels like to be saved by someone who simply chose to pay attention. 7 words on a coffee cup saved my life. Now I try to be the kind of person who writes those words for someone else. If you want more stories, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from.